Mabuhay, aloha hafade, hello. I'm Miss Jessica. I'm a children's instructor and research specialist with Howard County Library System. Welcome to Make With Me. Today, we're going to take a look at Stefan Gates' book, Science You Can Eat. This book contains 20 activities written for children ages 7 to 9, so we're talking about grades 2 to 4. Gates is a BBC presenter, also has his own YouTube channel. He's a self-proclaimed gastronaut who mashes up food, science, and fun in all manner of entertaining ways. In this book, each activity begins with a question or a prompt to explore the weird, wonderful, and often surprising science of foodstuffs. This book embarks on an easy-to-follow journey, starting with the basics of where our food comes from, the science of how we experience and experiment with food, to the future of food and the exciting prospects of things like entomophagy, eating insects. There's a lot to digest in this book, pun intended, and you're sure to learn a thing or two or 20. So let's make something. Friends, please get permission and assistance from your grown-up before attempting any of the projects that we explore together. And don't forget to clean up after yourselves. Remember, fun ends when safety ends. We're going to see if we can trick your taste buds with the experiment starting on page 12. This taste test will prove that taste is hugely influenced by sight. For this project, you will need water, sugar, 3 to 4 juiced lemons, food coloring, a large measuring cup, measuring spoons, a stirring spoon, cups, a handy survey chart, and writing instruments. Also, eventually, some volunteers. Here is the recipe we're going to use for our experiment. 1 pint of water, 6 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of lemon juice, and 4 to 6 drops of food coloring. Once you've made your dyed lemonade, you will need to pour equal portions into cups for your test subjects. I mean your volunteers. Each volunteer should have a flight of rainbow drinks, a survey chart, and something to write with. You can pause the video here to copy the information from my chart or refer to page 13 in the book. Our brains are remarkable. From the moment we see these drinks, our brain expects certain flavors or specific tastes for each color. This expectation, based simply on what we see, is enough to trick ourselves into thinking that identical tasting drinks taste different just because they are different colors. So, this trick may not work with everyone. Some people figure it out that the drinks all taste the same despite the different colors. And if they do, just tell them, congratulations on having some superior taste buds. Anyhow, you can place your request for Science You Can Eat and other titles at hclibrary.org using your library card and PIN number. And as always, I'd love to see what you're making at home. You can send those pics or videos to askhcls@hclibrary.org. I had a wonderful time with you today, and I sure hope to see you next time for more Make With Me. Bye. See ya.